report an officer down Midway and Sheridan in Broomfield. Unit reports that both an officer and suspect have been shot.
Reported carjackings turned shooting in a Broomfield neighborhood.
Officers fired back, hitting the suspect. It was a homicide investigation that this suspect was wanted in connection with.
Denver 7 News is live on scene as we continue our coverage on the officer shot and how witnesses describe what happened. We're continuing to follow breaking news out of Broomfield tonight after a Denver police officer was shot while chasing a suspect wanted in connection to a homicide.
It all happened just after 3 p.m. at the intersection of Midway Boulevard and Sheridan and Broomfield. That officer involved is in the hospital tonight and the suspect is confirmed to be deceased.
Denver 7's Rob Harris is live at the scene with an update for us. Rob, still a very active scene at that intersection.
Yeah, Jessica, and it's still completely shut off to traffic too. We still have this police presence on scene, and from the sounds of it, they're going to be here for a while investigating what happened today, and that does mean the traffic is still being turned away from Sheridan and Midway, though they have moved the barricades back so that people can get to their homes in the neighborhoods nearby. Now, here's what police are telling us so far about what happened today. Officers from the DPD Fugitive Unit were searching for a person of interest from a homicide out of Denver. They tracked that person of interest driving south on Sheridan here in Broomfield around 4 o'clock this afternoon. The person then turned left into Midway, hitting another car before spinning out. At that point, he got out of the car he was driving, tried to carjack a third car, and when that proved unsuccessful, he started shooting at officers, hitting one officer in the neck. Officers fired back, hitting and killing him.
I literally heard 6 pops. Pop, 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 one right after another. You know, you fear for your safety. You have all these thoughts that go through your head the moment you hear gunshots. You know, like, it's over here. Now what do I do? Do I have to go hide? And what about my family? And you literally start scrambling. Your brain goes a million miles an hour.
Now, as we said, the DPD officer who was shot was taken to the hospital, but we are told he's in stable condition. He is expected to be okay, and that's something the neighbors I've been talking to this evening are very thankful to hear. Live in Broomfield, I'm Rob Harris, Denver 7.
All right, Rob, thank you. Now, we are continuing to follow this developing situation throughout the hour, plus on our website, denver7.com, and streaming on the Denver 7 Plus app.
And now to the latest on Hurricane Ian. The powerful storm making landfall in Florida Wednesday afternoon as a Category 4 hurricane, decimating communities and knocking out power for 2 million customers. The storm has lessened to a still powerful Category 1 as it makes its way to the Carolinas. So far, at least 17 deaths have been confirmed according to local reports across the state. Those numbers expected to climb. Search and rescue crews from multiple agencies rushing to help more than 700 people today, helping stranded families trapped in their homes who thought they could ride it out.
We weren't prepared for quite a storm of this magnitude. We were hoping it would dodge us. It didn't. It got worse.
Now, the water damage is incredible to see, but it's also the damage caused by power problems, which have caused fires in some areas.
Our Dan Grossman shows us how those in Fort Myers who couldn't leave are faring and what it's like to watch decades of your life disappear.
As we got our first look at the worst of what Ian left behind, it was no longer the wind that felt relentless. It was the whooshing of choppers coming to rescue people.
The helicopters are flying overhead continuously. I don't know what they're doing.
Ellen Musto waited for her rescue.
They send you to the hospital? Well, they will when it comes.
As she spoke to her son for the first time since Ian hit.
As sad as we can be, I guess. I feel exhausted, cold, tired. Yeah, not fun. It's like a nightmare.
Her words only begin to explain the hell she and her friends endured when the Gulf of Mexico came crashing into their South Fort Myers home. The watermark on the interior walls explains the rest.
We saw the walls shaking, and I got up to have a cigarette, and that's when I saw the ocean, and I said, Mom, get up. And that's when this came through. It was scary as hell. We were all ready to die. We were literally saying goodbye to each other.
The day before was terrifying for many in Southwest Florida. Winds of up to 150 miles per hour and more than 7 feet of storm surge inundated much of the area as hundreds of thousands of people are without power and countless homes are ruined.
My dad and the dog were hanging on to this. Everything was floating.
And where most, like Ellen's friend Paul, dealt with water, some dealt with fire.
Maybe it'll make us younger by starting over.
Bob didn't give his last name, but he and his wife had successfully ridden out the storm until they heard a pop Thursday morning and saw this. Now he can only watch as the flames took what Ian spared.
Yeah, my wife and I were married 57 years, and a lot of history went down in that fire.
It was a sentiment that spanned the 1.5 miles of floodwaters that separated these two men.
I just want to cry thinking about it. It's scary. Very scary. That was one way I never wanted to die, was drowning. And I couldn't do anything to help anybody.
The pain that is here is immeasurable, but with each passing hour, the water will continue to recede.
You know, I cannot allow material things to get me down.
As the hope and resiliency of those who call this place home will continue to swell.
I just want a warm bed and something warm to put on, and a cup of coffee.
In Fort Myers, Florida, I'm Dan Grossman.
The stories coming out of Florida are just heartbreaking. Now, ahead of his visit to FEMA headquarters, President Biden spoke on the phone with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, approving the state's emergency disaster declaration, unlocking federal funding for the long recovery ahead.
We're continuing to see deadly rainfall, catastrophic storm surges, roads and homes flooded. We're seeing millions of people without power and thousands hunkered down in schools and community centers. They're wondering what's going to be left. What's going to be left when they get to go home, quote unquote, home?
The declaration also makes federal aid available, including grants to help individuals and business owners in 9 counties recovered from the effects of the disaster. South Carolina's governor is also declaring a state of emergency in anticipation for Ian's arrival.
Colorado is sending an emergency operations center support team to Florida. It's made up of 13 public safety professionals from the state. Once the team is in Florida, they will help distribute supplies over the next 14 days. Xcel Energy crews from Colorado are also on their way to help restore power. Colorado Red Cross volunteers are already in Florida. And for people looking to help with recovery efforts, the state of Florida has created a site to make it easier. It has options to donate and volunteer. Right now, there's a big call out for retired nurses and mental health professionals. You can find more information at volunteerflorida.org.
People in Georgia and the Carolinas are preparing for the storm with watches and warnings in place, and states of emergencies are in effect as far as north as Virginia. Now let's bring in Chief Meteorologist Mike Nelson, who is tracking Ian's path.
Mike, what is the radar showing you now?
Now that storm is just offshore in very warm water near the Gulf Stream, and as a result we have intensified it back up into a Category 1 hurricane. You can see that the rain is just about completely off of Florida right now, but very heavy rain will be heading towards Savannah, Georgia. And as that storm pushes up toward Charleston, this is the predicted path, moving it all the way up into the southern Appalachians. With the heavy rainfall, as it moves into that higher terrain, it'll cause a lot of problems there as well. This is what we're looking at as far as precipitation from this storm. 5 to 20 inches of very heavy rainfall. It will continue over the next couple of days as that storm continues to push toward the north and east. So that's the current location of it. You can see it's lost its hurricane signature, if you will. It's just a big swath of heavy rain, high seas. The storm surge will still be a problem here because it still has this circulation, even though it doesn't have a well-pronounced eye at the present time. And this will remain a very powerful and potentially deadly storm for a couple more days.
An apartment explosion in Aurora displacing residents and taking a toll on small businesses.
It has been frustrating. It wasn't how we planned
to do things.
How they're handling the fallout as they struggle to stay afloat.
Plus, lawmakers rushing to meet a Friday deadline to avoid a government shutdown.
And the Biden administration scaling back its student loan forgiveness plan. See who's now being left out.